Chile Boxing Talk. Got the homie Nopal Boxianos with us, and we got a very special guest, Brian, the boxing historian 206. Today we're doing our Muhammad Ali versus Ken Norton 3 rescore special, man. And I've been wanting to have Brian on for a while, man, and I thought this would be an appropriate one to have him come and give us our 2 cents. What's happening, Brian?
No, I'm doing good, man. How you doing, Chicano? How you doing, Boxanos? And how's the chat doing?
Man, thanks, brother. We're doing great, man. And we want to welcome everybody that's in the chat. We see JC up in the house. We see Sean giving us his best, and we got his scorecard to submit a little bit later, man. But, dude, let's get right into it, dude. This was an interesting fight to watch. We rescored Ali versus Ken Norton 3, okay? Now, we've discussed 1976 Ali already. Just as a refresher, this is his 5th fight in the year. So we already rescored the Jimmy Young fight. The Chile Crew deemed that one to not be a robbery. Some people had Ali winning. Some people had Young winning, but we all agreed that it was not a robbery. Now, after the boxer wrestler exhibition in June, we go to September, where Ken Norton faces Ali for the 3rd time. Okay, and in their first fight, Ken Norton won, breaking Ali's jaw. And a lot of people thought Ali looked lethargic. Ali won the 2nd fight by split decision, and some people think that Ken Norton won that fight. But then after that, Ali goes on to beat Joe Frazier in their 2nd fight, beat George Foreman, beat Frazier again in the 3rd fight to this 3rd fight, another trilogy with Ken Norton. And we've already discussed how historically it was very rare to beat the champ on the cards. Historically, these are like the only fights before possibly like you get into like the 1970s, 80s. Like it's very rare still at this point. So this fight went by unanimous decision to Muhammad Ali. And Ali said this after the fight. He said, "You've got to beat the champ. You got to whoop him. Did he beat me convincingly? I had to beat Joe Frazier twice, Sonny Liston twice, George Foreman. You can't fight like Jimmy Young. You got to whoop the champ. Drop me. Make me fall. Hurt me. Do you think I paid the judges? They never give me anything. I'm not a good American boy. I'm an arrogant blank. They wouldn't give it to me if I didn't win it." So, hey, man, there's a little bit of context for you. After this, Muhammad Ali goes on to fight 6 more times, and we could talk about that a little bit later. Man, I'd like to get right into it. Brian, please tell us how you saw this fight, man, and who'd you have winning?
It was very close, man. I thought it could have been. It was one of those fights that you watch them multiple times, you could have a different outcome. But I will say that I favored Ken Norton in the fight.
All right, so you have Ken Norton winning the fight, and so you classify it as being close. People have called this one as a robbery. They say that this is the most blatant of the possible Ali gifts that he was given. Do you classify it as a robbery?
Not so much a robbery, but Ken Norton probably should have won the fight. That's what I would say.
All right, man. Well, thank you so much for your 2 cents, brother. Do you have any other considerations about Ali in general or his trilogy with Norton, or this concept of taking it from the champ?
I would say, man, it just shows a testament of how talented and how great he was. This is, Ali past his prime, and fighting killers like Ken Norton, who's one of the 15 best, one of the top 10, 15 best heavyweights of all time, top 20. You know what I'm saying? One of the top 20 best heavyweights of all time to hold the heavyweight championship, man. And someone with his technical ability and his power and his jab that he had and his defense, man, it was very, for Ali to even compete with this dude the way he did past his prime is a testament to how great he was. And Ken Norton's legacy is based off of, his that trilogy with Ali, and amplified his legacy as well,
Oh, definitely. And like you said, this wasn't Ali past his prime, but I want to encourage people to go back and take a look at this fight. I don't think that it's one of those fights where Ali is shot or, you might think that he's faded, because we all know the damage that Ali ultimately took and how his health was because of that later on. But this Ali, to me, was a lot more sharper than he was against perhaps Jimmy Young earlier on in the year. Like this Ali came and was there to sit on his punches. And what I'd like to do is read Sean Gringo Hicks' scorecard. This is what he has to say about the fight. He says, "Great fight. Ali versus Norton 3 was really a war of attrition, as Ali seemed to land the clear shots from the outside, but Norton landed some absolutely violent shots to the body, especially in the 3rd. Norton doubled over Ali with the hook to the body that would have stopped 99.9% of the entire universe in their tracks. While I love the inside work attacking the body, Ali was seeming to land more often overall, and I gave them the extremely slight edge, 144 to 142, giving him rounds 1, 3, 7, 9, 10, 11, and 12, and the 15th. I know Ali showed a crazy chin, but Ali's conditioning was out of this world to take the type of punishment he did and still had enough in the tank to dance is simply amazing. Also, Norton in any other era would definitely be a long reigning world champion, only in my opinion. And that's the other thing, man. Like, I got to admit, thank you, Sean, for that scorecard. And I have to say, like, I agree, dude. Like, you know what? And it's like you said, Brian, like, man, I really grew to appreciate Ken Norton. I don't have any shame in saying that I wasn't familiar with Ken Norton too much or this trilogy, dude. So, I had a really good time going and watching this dude's skill set. Like, I need to go back and watch. I'd like to see him versus Jimmy Young. I'd like to go back and see him versus George Foreman, even though I know from what I understand, that's a pretty quick fight to watch, but I mean, very formidable. Oh my God. And this guy was devastating body puncher. So Nopal, tell us,
Yes, he
brother.
was.
Oh yeah. Nopal, tell us, how'd you have this fight, man?
Okay, so yes, I agree with Brian. This is Ali past his prime. He chose to fight flat-footed at the beginning, not his usual style. And I think by the third round, he was kind of gassed out by, fighting that style. So he kind of stopped landing and throwing shots like he would. I think there was 2 rounds right there where he just basically took those rounds off, and he was getting hit. So the first round I scored it for Ali. Second round, I scored it for Norton. I think that Norton started off the round really dominant, and then around the middle of the round, Ali had a good exchange with him. Nevertheless, still gave it to Norton. Third round, I scored it even, 10-10. Fourth round, I had Norton. Fifth round, uh, fifth round is the round where I said he took fifth and sixth off, so I gave both of those to Norton because he was still landing body shots and overhand rights. Seven, I think it was an even round. Ali started trying to come back a little. Eighth round, Norton had a pretty dominant round in my opinion. Ninth round is when he started he came back with his usual style, you know. And I made that an even round because Norton managed to connect a very solid right hand, which I believe was probably the best shot of that round. And then so round 10 I gave it to Ali. 11 I made that an even round. I had a couple even rounds. 12 I'm not sure if Ali was able to get a thumb in Norton's eye on that one, but I gave that round to Ali. 13 um uh I think that round 13 Norton started that off pretty strong, and then towards the end I think Ali started trying to steal the rounds, but I still gave that to Norton. Round 14 it was even, and then round 15 I gave that to Ali. I ended up scoring this. I had it pretty close. Keep in mind you're dealing with Ali, who's a legend here. And as I'm discovering, well, I actually always knew that boxing is very subjective, especially scoring. Um, I don't think that the organizations make uh, so much of an issue as to how perfect the I don't even think the judges go to school for this type of thing. They just whatever. You're so and so's son, and he's got a big influence in boxing. Yeah, go ahead. You're a judge now. You know what I mean? And them guys don't know how to score. So it often, what people see that don't know about boxing is they just see it exchange of energy. You know what I mean? Like who's more dominant in that rounds, stuff like that. They pick up on things like that, and also has to do with who's the baby face and stuff like that, because professional boxing is a show at the end of the day. So it's totally subjective. And I had this fight 144 Ali, I mean 146 144 to Norton, but at the end of the day I don't really consider this a robbery because we are dealing with Ali. And around that era, you had to take it from the champ. Basically, you had to knock his ass out. And I think that Ali did enough to make this kind of close, you know.
All right. So not a robbery according to Nopal. And then I have George off the ropes boxing MMA. He was not able to make it either. And he says he had it 8-7 for Ali, not a robbery. Run PMC is here. Run. What's happening, man? Nice to hear from the hired gun of Al Chile. How you doing, man?
What's up, guys? Glad to pop in for a little bit, just on my lunch at work, but glad to be back.
Nice, man. Well, hey, I'm just going to read off my scorecard, man, and then we can get a little bit more into this fight and just some final thoughts on the great Muhammad Ali, man. Well, here's what I want to say about this particular fight. I had Norton clearly winning this fight. I really enjoyed this fight. One of the things that I thought was interesting while watching this was that I thought he was definitely in better form, like I mentioned earlier, than he was when he fought Jimmy Young. You could tell the guy was a lot more sharp, would sit on his punches, and was there to bang. There's a criticism about Ali about not really ever going to the body too much. And the more I watch Ali, the more I do have to agree with that. Like Muhammad Ali just for some reason does not go to the body. I'm not sure if it's because maybe he could take body shots well and he doesn't think they're that effective, because Ali's got one hell of a chin, man. And like Sean mentioned, there was a shot that Norton hit Ali with, and you could tell he was wincing, but he didn't go down. Like Ali just had one hell of a chin, but never went to the body. But those power punches to me offset some of the volume that Ali had. So when I was watching the fight, that's what stood out to me, like the difference in the power punching. So I had Norton winning a lot of rounds. I had him winning 10 rounds to 3 with 2 even rounds. I had Norton winning the second, the third, the 5th, the 6th, the 8th, the 10th, the 12th, 13th, 14th, and 15th. And then I had Ali winning the 1st, 7th, and the 9th. And then I had rounds 4 and 11 even, right? But it's even based on the way I interpret things. But there were a couple of swing rounds. I thought, well, if you interpret these rounds differently, if you score in a different way, I could see rounds 3 and 12 possibly being possibly going to the other guy based on how you interpret a round. But I did see 2 other rounds to be even. So I think if you gave Ali every consideration, in my opinion, you could only give him 7 rounds. So I would personally classify this one as a robbery, but it's all just subjective. You know, that's my opinion. But you do have to take it from the champ. This fight was still extremely competitive. There weren't like what I would call to be like one-sided rounds. Not really. Like a lot of these rounds were pretty even, where I had Norton winning the round. I felt good about giving Norton the round, but I didn't necessarily think that this was like a one-sided fight, even though I gave him a lot more rounds, if that makes sense. It was an extremely competitive fight. So now we could get into it a little bit, man. Like if you guys have any thoughts about this particular fight that you'd like to elaborate on, or any thoughts about taking it from the champ, or even, you know, Ali's status at the time, man, please feel free to jump in and share your thoughts.
I mean, you know what? Like, you're dealing with a guy that's 35 and clearly past his prime, you know? On some of them rounds, you can clearly tell that if Ali had enough energy and just kept swinging, of course he'd win the round. He'd probably even get Norton out of there, in my opinion. So I think people know that too when they judge the fight. So they tend to just give Ali more, you know, more points. You know what I mean? It's like I said, I mean, he's like the baby face. So it's like you have way more sympathy for him. Like you're just looking for reasons to give him points. So, you know, a lot of times when you watch a fight, that's totally how the atmosphere is in that fight. You know, it takes me back to the Triple G Canelo fight. Like Triple G was totally the baby face. So when people were watching that fight, all they were worried about is what is Triple G doing right? And, you know, if you go back and watch that fight, you know, there was a lot of things that he did wrong and that he wasn't willing to do. So, you know what I mean? Yet the whole narrative and the atmosphere, the way they're thinking is, you know, they're just on Triple G's side. So of course people are gonna think that he got robbed or whatever. But and you know, I went off right there.
I know, dude,
But,
you're about to derail us, man. Brian, try to
yeah,
contain yourself,
somebody
man. I know how
take it
you
from
feel.
here, man. Somebody take it.
Well, yeah, hey man, I thought Triple G won that first fight for sure. I mean, the second fight though, Canelo. I mean, it was very obvious Canelo won the second fight. I mean, he was making Triple G back up in the fight, and Triple G had to use his jab to set up his combination instead of plowing through like he normally does. But as far as this fight is concerned, what gave Ali a lot of problems is that, because Ali, he fought. See, that era, that those were the best heavyweights. That was the best crop of heavyweights in the history of boxing, from that 1967 era all the way to 77. You could not find better skilled heavyweights, more talented, naturally gifted, talented, skilled heavyweights than that era, from 1997 to 1977. All right, from that decade, that year, that 10-year stretch, you could not find it. Right. And Ali, he fought a lot. Like Jimmy Young, he was a boxer fighter. He was a slick boxer that would stand in the pocket and throw at you. All right. Who had a jab. He fought someone like Jimmy Young, who was a very good counter puncher with a good jab at the time. He fought those type of dudes, and he fought Joe Bugner, who was a good boxer, boxer puncher, who was a good boxer who could box on the outside. He was 6'4" with a 80-some inch reach. Who was very capable of boxing off the back foot. When he and he fought Joe Frazier, who was an inside fighter, stating left foot, probably best. Joe, you know, and Ron Lyle, excellent counter puncher. You know what I'm saying? Power puncher. The list goes on and on. We already know about Ernie Shavers, probably the hardest hitting heavyweight in the history. But the thing that made Ken Norton such a problem for Ali, he had the ability to box very well. He had that cross arm defense, which I don't understand why these cats today, they don't use that. The guys want to do the shoulder roll Mayweather Philly shell style. I don't understand why they don't use that cross arm, because that's very effective. That shell defense that he had, the great jab that he had, you know what I'm saying? He gave you the best of both worlds, the technique and the skill set, the ability to put punches together, his great jab, his punching power, at the top 50, in my opinion, pound for pound. Great jab, very good left hook, very powerful overhand right, and very good uppercut. He had the full punch package. And you can't say that for every boxer in any weight class, for that matter, but especially for heavyweight. You can't say that every heavyweight has the full punch package. He had the full punch package, plus he had the jab, and he had the ability to put combinations together. He had the defense, and he had the power to give. He broke Ali's jaw in the second fight, if I'm not mistaken, right? He gave Ali a lot of problems just based off that alone. And I think that Ken Norton, when you look at his style was designed to take away boxers at what they're good at and what they're able to do. And that's why, we argue that Ken Norton won that trilogy fight. But that's what made him such a tactical problem, all right, as an opponent for Ali.
Man, that was great stuff. And that's why I wanted Brian on, man. Lots of great perspective. Thank you, Brian. And those are some great observations, and as far as Ken Norton's punching power, man, I have to agree, and I agree with Brian. You can assess punching power based on what you see and based on the quality of opposition. And, I don't know if you had to go back, Brian, and actually kind of retroactively start following everything. But I think that I would know a lot more about the punching power of somebody like Norton versus Ali, if I was watching it in real time, kind of like I watch things today in real time, just how do you assess how great somebody's resume is? And we're going to get into that here in a second. But yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, it's definitely a lot of good considerations. The other thing that I wanted to mention too was Ali's style. He mentioned that he was going to sit down more on his punches, and he did. You could tell that he wasn't the same guy who used to be able to dance. So there's a couple things I noticed, back in the day, back in the older 60s films, you'd see Ali dance, and he would do the whole float like a butterfly sting, it'd be pop, pop, pop. They come in and just whip your ass, whether it be by decision or maybe knocking you out. He would just come in and demolish you. But it was kind of like a nostalgia act, in the late 70s, in my opinion, when you do it every once in a while. And it was maybe to buy time, but then he wouldn't come in and just dominate like he used to. So it was kind of a different look, in my opinion. The other thing too is he started sitting down more in his punches. And this kind of lends to my theory about Tyson Fury. I've said for a while now that I think Tyson Fury, he has to change up his style, and I think he's kind of doing it without people noticing. I think the idea of Fury just kind of dancing around and going on the back foot, and him being able to have that style for 12 full rounds, I don't think that he can do that at 34 years old. I don't know that for sure, but that's just a theory I have. But when you see the great Muhammad Ali have to change it up and have to sit on his punches at 34, it makes you think that there might be some validity to it.
Yeah, I mean, you can't, and it's like, okay, how can we judge how hard someone hits? Do we go and let them hit a low bag to show their per square inch punch? I mean, we can do that. That's for like show and whatnot, but leverage, timing, and look, in boxing, like I always say, is a martial art, right? Where you hit somebody like behind the ear is a money shot. If you hit somebody behind the ear, that's a money shot, and it can look more devastating. You know what I'm saying? Even if you don't even throw with maximum power, where the tempo and the behind the ear shot, that's like equilibrium. You know what I'm saying? That's damaging. And of course, the solar plex, the liver shot, the artery shot, those things are very, those are very devastating areas to hit someone at. And sometimes, where you hit somebody it can look like you have more power than what you actually put on it. But, look, at the end of the day, I would say back then guys were a lot more physically stronger than guys today, in particular the heavyweight division. I mean, guys are bigger now. That doesn't necessarily mean they're stronger or they're physically tougher. From what when you have strong legs, you can stay on your feet and take shots a little bit more heavier. And those uppercuts he threw at Ali, man, it was like, damn, man. And that's measuring how hard Norton hit. Is he Marciano, Sonny Liston, Ernie Shavers, George Foreman type of puncher? No, but he would be in this, even a Joe Frazier, Mike Tyson, nah. But is he in the second tier of those punchers? Yes, he'd be like in the top 30, top 25 in that category. You understand? That's definitely something we got to look at, and our quality of opposition matters, like you were saying, Chicano. It matters a hell of a lot, because sometimes you can knock out someone that you're supposed to knock out, but when you stop, when you fight someone in the top levels, right? Someone could probably take your shot even better than some other guys that could take it. Sometimes somebody's defense, were the way they roll the punches off their face, they can take the leverage off the punch and the impact that you throw, and it can and you have to push harder. You got to put your punches together, But what Norton did to guys like Jerry Corey, and some other guys at the time, knocking them the hell out. It just, to me, it tells you how great of a chin Ali had, bro. Bar none.
Oh, man. That's great stuff. And Brian, I know you got to get rolling here in just a little bit, so I'd like to kind of move on to our next subject just to get your opinion on this. While we were rescoring the Jimmy Young fight, they were already calling Ali the greatest in real time as he was an active fighter. So I want to know your opinion on, if you assess a fighter's all-time status in real time as they're fighting, do you do it? Why or why not? You're on mute, brother.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, and I appreciate Chicano, Run PMC, and No Paul Boxalanos, and the old Chapman. I appreciate you all having me on. But to answer this question, assessing an active fighter's all-time status, why not? If somebody accomplished something that's great, when Bernard Hopkins was making his run, I was saying, man, Bernard Hopkins at the very least a top 20 boxer of all time. When he was making his run, still in his late 40s, in his mid to his late 40s, I was saying, bro, yeah, he's an active fighter. Why not put him in that all-time status? If he's accomplished and done what he's done, why not? What Canelo Alvarez is all-time status. All right. And really, he may be the only all-time great that's fighting right now. I mean, I forget what's his name in the lower weight class. His name escapes me. You guys know who he is, Mexican boxer. Or Roman Gonzalez. He has an all. He has a stake
Chocolatito.
for. Yeah, Chocolatito. Yeah, Chocolatito. He has a stake for all time status. But really, Canelo, he's the only one doing it right now. And I'll look, love him or hate him. I'm going to say, look, he's doing something that's on that status of an all time great. As far as Ali's concerned, at that particular point, 3-time undisputed heavyweight champion, clearing out the best, most talented division in the history of the heavyweight division. No one's fucking with that class in any era. All right. I don't care what you say. And for him to beat everybody and leave nobody on the table, everybody from that era, up to that point of fighting Jimmy Young, greatest of all time. And you could proclaim that, he professed it. He even said that when he beat Liston, I'm the greatest. And guess what? He proved it. So, nah, he's the greatest, man. I mean, he was the greatest when he was fighting, and he was the greatest after he was fighting. So that's how I assess it. And I think it's fair to make that assessment if they accomplished what they did. With that being said, I'm out. Peace to y'all.
Thanks so much, Brian, for joining us.
See
We
you, Brian.
appreciate it, brother. Have a good day.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Brian.
Well, that was Brian, the boxing historian 206. You can always find his channel, man. They got a lot of good debates going on. And he talks MMA too and other things, good issues in general, man. So I always like to hear what he has to say. Run PMC is here with us, man. We've missed you, brother. So please tell us your thoughts, man. If you want to elaborate a little bit on how you feel about Ali being assessed as the greater of all time in real time, and how you feel about assessing a fighter's all-time status in real time.
No, I agree a lot with what Brian said. I don't really have an issue with the assessing, or at least starting to assess people's all-time status when they're in their boxing career. I mean, I wasn't alive to see Ali fight, but the guy I think about that I was alive to see was Roy Jones Jr. in real time, and just seeing. Obviously, he didn't have the opposition, but what he did have was he did have opposition early in his career with Bernard Hopkins and James Toney that aged really well, and he did climb all those weight classes. But it was the way in which he was winning, which is really dominant, and it was just things that guys that were he was sort of ahead of his time in a way of just how dominant he was and just the athleticism and unorthodox style he had. But I don't see an issue with it. Like Bernard Hopkins, when he was making his run at 175, I have no issue with that. With what Canelo's doing right now, if he just keeps doing what he's doing, obviously you have to give him credit. I mean, like Brian said, there aren't other boxers really doing that right now in the game, and you just have to give people credit for what they're doing. I mean, when they were saying that in the Jimmy Young fight, like it's true that Muhammad Ali at that point had already come back, beat Foreman. He only had 2 losses at that time. I think it was just this Ken Norton fight, and then it was the Joe Frazier fight when he came back after he was stripped from his title. So that's a pretty good career. And if you just look at just the names he has on his record, very impressive. And he kept going after that. Granted, was he much aged once he got to like the Leon Spinks, the Larry Holmeses of the world? Most definitely. But you're not defined just by like if you have the O on your record. It's about the way you won, the quality of opposition you faced, when you faced the quality of opposition too. Because it's like you could face guys that are past their prime, and sure it will look good in the history books, but we sort of lose those contexts. That's why I'm glad with the show that we do the rescores and try to gain some context on the fighters. But I don't have an issue with assessing fighters during their career at all. Not at all.
I hear you, brother. Well, hey, I want to give a shout out to JC's up in the house. Thank you so much for joining us, man. El Chido, A-Rod is here, the founder of El Chile Boxing Talk. Remy's in the house, man. We're glad to have you here, brother. And it's like Remy says, dude, Ali beat the government as well. Yeah. No, Paul, what are your thoughts on this, man?
I mean, I like it, bro, because especially if there's a fighter that stands out above the other guys, because we've seen the Mayweather, way of doing things is I'm just going to take the easiest fights and make the most money. You know what I mean? If I can fight an MMA guy, that's who I'm going to fight because that presents very low risk to me, and I could still have my undefeated record, and I could just make money like that. But when you got a guy that's not just thinking that way, who also makes a lot of money, but at the same time, he has the choice to do these circus fights. He has the choice to fight, very low risk opposition. You know what I mean? He has that he has that option open, yet he still decides to take the tougher challenges, like almost like he has something to prove to himself, and he just continues to do that most of the time. You know what I mean? When you have a fighter like that, I think that it's necessary for some of us to, always put that fighter above the other guy, above the other challenge, above the other fighters, so the other fighters can see what he should be doing. It's kind of like a pressure that we put on other fighters, you know, like, that's what you should be doing. You know what I'm saying? We're not going to take you seriously until you start doing something like that. And then when they start saying, "Oh well, he's ducking me," in reference to the fighter that's doing all these things that they're not doing, it's like we're just going to get a chuckle out of it because um we're just going to get a chuckle out of them saying that the dude's ducking him because guess what? That guy's already fought guys way tougher than you. He's already being put in way tougher circumstances, and you have no leg to stand on trying to say that the guy's ducking you. Just remember, that guy's career doesn't revolve around what you want him to do. That guy's already proven way more than you will ever even prove. You know what I'm saying? And I think, like I said, it's necessary. I like it that people were already calling Ali the greatest, that he himself was calling himself the greatest because he was doing things that nobody else would even dream of doing. And we can see similar circumstances in this era, similar, but on that level, you'll never get to that level. But I'm glad that there is still fighters that try to you know try to give us those tough challenges rather than just taking the easy money fights.
I co-sign all of this, man. Like I agree with Brian. Like, why not, man? To me, it makes sense, especially, if you have some knowledge. In general, I do understand the concept of like, well, maybe not assess somebody's all-time status when they're in the middle of their career. I kind of resonate with that a little bit, but I think if you become extremely accomplished, then there's no reason not to get started right away. Like if say Canelo at 31 has accomplished all these things, you can measure what Canelo's done and measure it up against what other people have done at that certain age. Like, based on uh number one rankings, unifications, different weight classes, quality of opposition. There's no reason that you can't do it. You can also do it with people who are certainly underqualified and won't even be close to an all-time status, like Jermall Charlo. Like, for sure that he won't ever be in the conversation because he doesn't have enough time. So you could say this guy won't even rank. I mean, will he even make the Hall of Fame kind of talk? I mean, you could talk about that stuff now. You can also assess an all-time greats status currently as far as where he ranks as far as all-time greats. To me, there's no reason not to. On top of that too, like based on your knowledge, there shouldn't be any difficulty doing that. Like, I've been following boxing as like, casual, but maybe more than like a casual, right? For like maybe like 15 years. And it's like once you've been watching for about 15 years, you can kind of see uh the careers come and go. We've already seen like two generations of fighters, kind of, so I can go back and look at like a Juan Manuel Marquez, and I actively remember who he was fighting, what considerations I made about his status, right? And then when I look at other 135 pounders, or maybe like, a lower weight class dude who kind of came up a few weight classes, I can actively compare them in my head because I remember those eras. Like I can compare like a Sergio Martinez to Jermell Charlo, right? Or what Sergio Martinez even did at 160 compared to 160 pounder right now, right? So to me, if you have the knowledge, I don't see any reason why you couldn't do it because I can already do it with the previous generation. Now, I can see it being a little bit of a matter of convenience if you just don't have the knowledge. Like to me, there's a couple things I've learned from this rescore and just rescoring in general. One, like I don't think there's any way you can compare the era of like the print era to the modern fighters, simply because they gave the defending champion the benefit of the doubt way too many times, and we wouldn't know any different, right? So to me, I think it would be impossible to assess like all-time greatness in a way based on those on those facts. That's just my opinion. But when you have film, like you have to go back, and to me, you'd really have to have some knowledge. So like I think it's a bit of a convenient thing for some people sometimes when they go, well, I don't assess fighters until their career's over with. Like, well, that does a couple things. One, you don't have to put previous fighters under a magnifying glass. Like, in these rescores, we found a lot of dirty laundry about certain fighters, like Chavez, right? He was fighting in a bull ring, an illegal bull ring. Nobody says anything. He had a a loss that was scrubbed from his record. He fought Pernell Whitaker at a catch weight, but you don't want to say that stuff, right? So it's like, oh well, I don't assess, because then that's common, because then it gives you the ability to trash people like Canelo in real time about ring size or whatever the hell you want to, right? But if you have that conversation, then you got to keep things fair. Well, what gifts did these people get back in the day? Like, you have to have a lot more knowledge, and you got to be consistent. So to me, I can understand why certain people don't do it, but I also think it can be a bit of like a convenient way of just not having that conversation.
I want to touch on that real quick. I'm a big baseball fan as well, in addition to boxing. So I always think of, obviously, it's important for context within someone's career, and just like the things you're talking about, whether it's ring size, losses being scrubbed from records, or like even if you think about like a really like low level fight, not really low level, but a few years ago in the UK when Malik Scott was fighting Derek Chisora, and he got up at the count of 8, and then he was counted out. He was counted because then they're saying, oh, that's just a custom in the UK, is if you get up at 8, you have to get up before that. It's like you should be able to get up at 10, and then it's the referee's discretion. So I think it's important for context. But looping back to baseball, what I think about when it comes to that is like you have a total number of like home runs on your career, how many home runs you hit, but it doesn't specify if you're in a ballpark that was smaller or if it was a ballpark that was bigger, because it's not a standardized field like it is for football or basketball. Whereas baseball, some fields have smaller fences, some fields have larger fences. So that's what I look at is like with boxing, sometimes they might request you to wear 10-ounce gloves, 8-ounce gloves, bigger ring, smaller ring, loose ropes, tighter ropes, and like the different surfaces on the ring. Like, and they're obviously they can even do the composition of the ring. Floyd Mayweather not allowing Maidana to wear certain gloves. So it's all those little specifics that's important for context, but at the same time, we sort of have to take it as a whole, but it's important at the same time to know the context that surrounds the particular fighter at the particular time.
100%, especially when you're considering fantasy fights. Like, I've heard D-Style say, well, this person historically, like, well, what are we talking? Like, how many rounds? What type of gloves are we talking? Look at the activity, like, I mean, how would Mayweather perform if he was fighting 5 times a year? I mean, we simply don't know. There's a lot of different considerations to make, or 15 rounders, right? Like, how would things play out? So, yeah, no, it's important. And that's why I do think that it is important to maybe kind of categorize certain eras when we're talking about certain things, in my opinion. So I mean, those are great considerations, man. And I mean, that's one of the things I've really enjoyed about just kind of going back and just learning, because like I don't know a lot about a lot of these all-time greats historically, but with these rescores and just catching up, like it's been super enjoyable. But yeah, man, I'm totally on the same page. No, Paul, you got anything on this before we move on to the next subject, brother? I guess not. Well, man, salute to the great Muhammad Ali, but we're going to stay on this Muhammad Ali train and talk about one more last thing. One thing that I want to talk about was the using of the Ali name in the modern era. Okay, now there's a couple instances going on of Muhammad Ali's name being brought up with Nico Ali Walsh, and then also Mikel Rivera, who says that he's the reincarnation of Muhammad Ali. But I want to start off with Nico Ali Walsh. Run PMC, man, do you have any thoughts on this dude in particular, brother?
I mean, I've watched him fight. I mean, I think we've all watched him come up and debut, and they show his grandmother and his mom in the stands, and I think it's cool. I think it's cool to get more. You could possibly get some more common, like non-hardcore boxing fans' eyes on the game. And it's like you say, oh, Muhammad Ali's grandson, and you see it just when you're watching like the NBA on ESPN, and you see the commercial that he's fighting this weekend. You're probably going to tune in. You might see like Shakur Stevenson or any other top-ranked guys that you might actually enjoy watching. And it's like, oh, it's just on ESPN Plus or ESPN, and you might gain another follower. And I think he has every right to use Muhammad Ali's name, since it is his name, it is his grandfather. So I think it's every right. I just think, like, who am I to say that he can't use the name? I just think sometimes some fighters some boxers that are up and coming guys might look and get jealous of this guy, that his skill set's not the best compared to other boxers that are up and coming, and he's getting a lot of the limelight. He's being featured a lot where other guys should be featured, probably, but at the same time, it's like that's Bob Arum, Todd DeBuff, and whoever, Carl Moretti, whoever's running Top Rank. That's their prerogative. That's their choice to feature certain guys to gain more followers. And I don't know. It's sort of like, do we want the game to grow? You might have to throw a guy on the undercard that might not have the skills that other guys have. But at the same time, we don't get big undercards anyway anymore for the most part. So it's like we have to just take it for what it is. But I mean, for me, even though I never watched Ali fight live, like not even close, not even 20 years, but it's um it's good to see it. I mean, I watched all. Funny enough, when I this past week I watched the movie Ali again. And I thought that was. I mean, I'm not the boxing historian that boxing historian is, Lee Groves is, D Style is, but it was cool to see like a lot of the stuff they had, like when you compare it to interviews in that movie, is pretty accurate. And Muhammad Ali is the greatest, and he is the most iconic boxer, like they say used to say, the world over. So I'm all for it, but at the same time, I feel for those boxers that are just they're grinding right now and they're trying to get up, and then they're just overlooked because Nico Ali watches the co-main event on some of the undercards.
Hey, dude, great points. Nopal, what do you think about this, man?
Oh man, I was hoping you weren't gonna ask me, man. That's
Bro,
why
you
I
need to
dipped
keep it
out.
out. You need to keep it out Chile, bro. I mean, Run, he's a fair-minded guy, but if you want to pop off, you pop off, man.
Oh man, I got mixed feelings, bro. On one hand, I'd say it's okay, but on the other hand, man, it's just I don't know, man. Uh, on the other hand, it just I don't know. It doesn't feel right, man, because he looks nothing like Ali, and I'm not gonna get deep into that one, but you know, I mean, it's okay entertainment. I don't know if his career is gonna go anywhere, but I think he's like what 170 pounds or something.
I don't even really know what weight class he's at, to be honest.
Oh, okay. But
Run, you got anything on that?
I
I'm
thought he was
hoping.
I thought he
Go ahead.
was like 168, 175, sort of, because he's not really fighting for titles, so he sort of just floats around, right?
Yeah, he's doing the 155 right now, huh?
I'm gonna take a look. I'm gonna take a look while Nopal gives his thoughts right here. I'm gonna take a look.
I'm hoping he fights the other dude, the one that's supposedly the reincarnation, huh? I'm hoping they build up to them two guys fighting. Since hey, man, I'm the reincarnation. I'm actually Ali's grandson. Let's get it on. Something like that, in like some type of fight. But
He's a
he
middleweight.
does.
Oh, he's a
Oh,
middleweight.
160. Huh.
Yep.
Oh man. Well, I mean, I'm like neutral on the situation. I guess there's elements that I'm just not cool with. I guess I'm not happy with, and then there's things where that's cool. You know what I mean? So I'm like in the middle.
Yeah. Speaking of name changes, I think Sugar Hill Stewart, he went through a name change. He started adopting the Stewart name kind of when he started training Fury, if I remember right. I think he went through a name change too. Just saying.
I think it was a little before that. I remember when he was training, like, who was he training? Was it when he was in Adonis Stevenson, or when he stepped in as with the Klitschko's after Emmanuel passed? No, it was Jonathan Banks when he was training Jonathan Banks for those Seth Mitchell fights. That's when I noticed the
Oh.
name change. Because remember that occurred, like, it was only I think a few months after Emmanuel passed, and then Jonathan Banks upset Seth Mitchell with the knockout. He ended up losing the second fight, but it was pretty recent after. It was on HBO. That was a pretty good moment in boxing for like a not so well known fight.
Mm. And Remy here says he doesn't fight like Ali for sure. 155 is right. Remy, did you miss the Ali shuffle that he did? Come on, man. Yeah, no, I'll tell you, no, he doesn't fight like him at all. But yeah, dude, him trying to do this thing, I think it's high risk, high reward. I mean, certain people are going to want to see him go down. I don't like the nostalgia. I think it's a little bit too much promotion in a way. Like when they show him like going into a room with like a poster of his grandfather, or like, oh hey, Muhammad Ali weighed in on this scale, and he comes in, he's like, oh man, wow, I'm getting all emotional over here. Like to me, I think it's a little bit too much. But hell, if you got the name, you might as well use it, and you're gonna get that pressure anyways. And you got the bright lights on you, so you do have an advantage that other people might not get. But then again, like people are going to be looking to take you out. If somebody beats you, I mean, that propels their career.
I was gonna say, I don't know if you guys went on Twitter, but Layla Ali has a son that looks just like Muhammad Ali.
Oh yeah,
So
especially if you pull up younger pictures. Like they were doing the comparison, but if you pull up a younger Ali, you said it, man. They look very similar.
watch him start boxing and totally get all the attention now. You know what I mean? And Wash being all mad. That'd be crazy, huh?
Oh yeah. And speaking of looking like Ali, I want to talk about Mikel Rivera, a lightweight. He says that he's the reincarnation of Ali. He said it twice. He's also adopting the look. He's trying to have the look. He's got Ali in his trunks. Run PMC, what do you think about all this, man?
I just want to say this to preface what I'm about to say is that I like Michel Rivera as a fighter. I like his style. I think he's a good fighter, up and coming in the lightweight division. I've seen a few. I've seen him. I believe he's gotten dropped and come back and knock the guy out. So he's pretty good style, pretty good skilled. But I don't really like him trying to take someone else's image and likeness on, especially someone that's sort of hallowed ground when you go to Muhammad Ali, especially now that he has passed, and it's just sort of rubbed me the wrong way that he's doing that. He adopts the hairstyle, the same exact like style of trunks, like that old school style exactly, has the high boots and everything. I mean, you could like what you like, and who am I to say that the fighter can't wear certain gear in the ring that makes him feel comfortable? But at a certain point, it gets a little weird for me. And like I sort of felt the same way about like Chris Colbert calling himself in the beginning Lil B Hop, and then he said at the end, or when like more recently, he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna change my name. I want to be my own man. Want to be my own." Then he's called himself Primetime, like Deion Sanders. I'm like, you didn't even change your own name to like your own name. But for Michel Rivera, I mean, like I said, I think he's a great fighter, but I'd rather see him adopt his own sort of look or his own. I mean, maybe you can't change the way you look, but maybe calling yourself the reincarnation of Muhammad Ali, that's a bit far for me. Like you can wear the same gear. I think it's a little weird. He has his name on his trunks. It's I could see if you had a connection to him, and then you're like dedicating a fight on like the anniversary of his death or something like that, and it's just a one fight deal, and you're paying homage, paying respect. But saying you're the reincarnation is a bit much for me.
For sure, man. And I'm not going to get into the whole reincarnation talk, even though you guys know I could go there, right? But I'm not going to this time. I'm going to let that one pass. I'm not going to get all new age on you guys. No, Paul, what do you think about this, man?
Yeah, so Run rules this as the ultimate clout chase, right?
Yeah, it's
Um,
too much. It's too much for me, especially like with Muhammad Ali. It's
Yeah,
just
you know
too
what?
much.
And it's
yeah,
already getting a little old too. You know, how long are you going
Yeah,
to keep this up, you know?
yeah,
yeah. I
exactly.
mean, he could have those trunks, but why does he put Rivera on him? You know what I mean?
Yep.
People still know that he's trying to fight like Ali. Ali didn't even his trunks didn't even say Ali on them, huh? They just had the branding of Everlast or something or Franklin or something.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
what was I gonna say? I had no idea this guy was a lightweight Chicano. I thought he was like middleweight or something. You know, maybe they just show up these close up pictures where you can't really tell how big he is. You know, but I basically feel like Run feels. You know, and I haven't really seen him fight yet. I just seen him on Twitter, and that's about it.
Yeah, man, he needs to drop it as far as I'm concerned. Like he's got the attention. He has people like us talking about it, but he needs to stand on his own 2 feet and make his own name now. Like, and he's starting to become a little bit more prominent at lightweight. And yeah, you need to change up the trunks at the very least. Like if you happen to look like him, that's one thing, but this is a little bit too much in my opinion. Especially if you don't have like the blessing of the family. Like it's just kind of weird, So I think that he should change it up. But I'm like Ron, I like his style well enough. Like I'm curious to see like what he does moving forward. He seems to be tough. He has a good style. Um, he might be ready for a title fight here within a few fights. You never know. I mean, 135, it's kind of shifting around a little bit, man. Anybody have any final thoughts on this before we wrap it up?
I just want to contrast this with another fighter that's fighting that is actually trained by a fighter I already mentioned today is Chris Eubank Jr. Is that he seems to be emulating a lot of what Roy Jones does, and sort of the style he's wearing. I don't know about the trunks and like the kit he's wearing, but I think that's more of because Roy Jones trains his fighters like that to like go around the ring like that. Because I've seen a few clips from Roy Jones Pensacola gym, and it seems like they're doing a lot of the drills that you see in sort of the old Roy Jones training videos. So I know Roy Jones like trained Jesse Vargas, and you have to work with what you have too at a certain point. Like I think it's fair to say that if you were to compare styles, Eubank's style might be closer than or to Roy Jones than Jesse Vargas, but at the same time, like at least he's emulating Roy. He's trying to look a little like Roy, but Roy's his trainer, so he sort of has like the blessing of Roy to do that. But for Rivera to do this, unless somehow he does have the blessing of the family, like I said, too much.
No, man, I hear you. Well, hey, man, we're gonna wrap this one up, and before we do, man, I just wanted to highlight our next controversial rescore, man. We're gonna do it. Let's take a little look here and put my camera back on and show you fellas what we got planned next. We're going for it, man. Last week we would have had the rematch of Jermel Charlo versus Castano, and now I know we've talked about this one a little bit, but this one has been classified as a robbery. It's probably the most recent one that we've actually taken a look at, and I'm actually looking forward to it because I've only seen it once. I thought it was a damn good fight in real time. Does anybody have any thoughts on this fight?
That was a good fight. I mean, I was so happy when because we want to have undisputed, and it's really good when you have undisputed. Is when you have two fighters at their prime fighting for undisputed. That's even better. And I remember watching the Patrick Teixeira fight when Castani was challenging him, and it was on the Golden Boy card. It was on the zone. I'm like, man, it would be the worst if Teixeira retains his belt because we're never going to see undisputed if you have Golden Boy and PBC working because they're not going to work together. But then when Castani went out there and just dominated, I'm like, thank God we're going to get this fight. We had a great fight the first time, and hopefully Castanio's biceps healed or whatever the issue was, and May 14th we're ready to go.
Hey, dude, and speaking of Charlos, dude, Ron, now that you're here, and Nopal, we had a week off. I'd love to know your quick opinion on Jermall Charlo, his new opponent, the fact that he couldn't get a deal done with McGee. Are you guys up to date on this? Ron, you got any thoughts?
I've just seen a little in the group chat, and then just perusing boxing, seeing when I have a chance. But I don't know. I guess it fell through, and Golden Boy wanted to have DAZN involved, right? That's what Oscar's stance was, right? He wanted DAZN involved to some extent, right?
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of tough when you have these fights that aren't like this. Isn't Manny Pacquiao, Floyd Mayweather. This isn't Lennox Lewis, Mike Tyson, where you have two network giants at the time, Showtime and HBO, coming together. This is like because you only have a few stars in boxing right now. You have Canelo, and then you have like Fury and AJ, sort of like at that like 1B sort of ranking on the at the star list regarding how much they can draw. So it would be sort of hard to I feel like I don't know the business, but it would seem like it'd be hard to get both networks to come together just to get like a relatively not it's not low level, but like in the eyes of the like general public, a low level fight together. And I would have loved to see it. I think that's a great fight. I think that's pretty even, and I think I mean, this would be the best time I guess for us as fans to see that fight because I think Charlo he is getting older, so I think there's always that one fight where you might run into, and then that he's just they say old overnight, which isn't always true, but we saw it with Montiel. Like Montiel really skill set wise, athleticism wise, really has no business being in the ring with Charlo. And then he hurt Charlo. Or they said he wasn't hurt, but I think he was a little stunned in the middle of the ring. And you got him up and you really beat him up sometimes on the ropes. Did Charlo clearly win? Yes. But Montiel also, like years ago, was knocked out by Munguia. And we see Munguia's improving with Eric Morales. So it would have been a great fight. Hopefully it can happen after this, but I don't see how it would if they couldn't come to agreement now.
No, Paul, what do you think, brother?
I wanted to kind of attack this more from a business standpoint. I was kind of uh I don't understand why, even when the Oscar De La Hoya is asking for something totally reasonable, everybody's just jumping on his case, you know. And all we're dealing with a fighter, Charlo, who has ducked multiple offers from all sides. So, he's gotten himself in kind of like a very privileged position where he can say no to a fight and still the other guy gets criticized. Of course, that didn't happen in this point. This point, we happen to have two marquee fighters that have a strong representation from their promoters. So of course the fight wasn't possible because they didn't want nobody wanted to do a 50-50 type thing with the networks or whatever. So I guess it wasn't a big enough fight and they all decided mutually to say no. But at the same time, I don't understand the fans how right away they want to blame Oscar De La Hoya for something totally reasonable. I mean, that's one of his top fighters. Of course, he's gonna want. Of course, the only way he's gonna be able to give us this fight is if the zone is involved in this fight because that's who they're signed to. You know what I mean? So and it's a little peculiar that 2 days after the fight breaks through, they already have an opponent lined up, almost as if um they only used Munguia as kind of like a prop to give us the Sulecki fight. You know what I'm saying? Like it's weird, and it's disappointing. I know that Jamal Charlo hasn't fought anybody, and we should be used to it by now. But it still stings, man. I mean, the dude's career is going by, and all he's gonna do is he's basically part of the payday squad. You know what I mean? It's like three fighters that all they care about is, is fighting Canelo, and that's all they care about. That's what, that's all they're shooting for. And in between there, they're just gonna fight nobodies, with low risk fights because, and it's messed up.
I want to give a shout out to the Don who's in the house. Thanks for joining us, man. And then Nando Yamas. Nando, just in time, man. We were shitting on Jamal Charlo right now. We're trying to get it in while Gringo's not here, because I don't like doing it when he's here because I feel bad, but I got a lot of strong feelings about Jamal. But I got to say this. He's doing a good job just kind of, knowing his place. Like I feel like if you hear him on the Tyson podcast, like he's sitting there basically saying like, oh, Canelo's not ducking anybody. Like he certainly, he didn't say this, but you can tell he's basically saying like, well, he's not ducking me. He can't afford to go there, and we know why, because he was already offered a fight. Run, you didn't tell me, does the Jamal Charlo versus Sulecki fight, does that give you chills? Are you excited?
No, not really at all. I mean, Sulecki was good back when he was good, but he was never really like a world beater. And it's like, no offense to Gabe Rosado, but Gabe Rosado fought him and dropped him twice, I believe. And Gabe Rosado was on the brink of stopping him. But Gabe Rosado he just didn't have enough, and the bell rang. I believe Gabe Rosado fought him. I think it was on the zone. But Sulecki, I don't know. I think he beat, what's his biggest win? Gabe Rosado, Hugo Centeno? Is that those biggest?
I think he bought those as far as wins go. Yeah, I think those are his biggest names.
Yeah, this would be a good fight for like Morel, like at 168. Say they're fighting at 168, like someone that's sort of up and coming. But for Charlo at this point, because I know Charlo might not have he has the best team for him, if that means like he gets the most money for the least reward or at least risk, which is good for him. But for us as a fan, I don't care about his money. I just want to see good fights. And Charlo, I think he's a good fighter, like very explosive, very athletic. Obviously, he's more one-dimensional now. We're seeing at the upper levels when he fights these guys, but he still has a shot when he fights big names. So I would much rather see like an Andre fight or something like Canelo said. I wish I could see the fights. Like I wish I could see Canelo fight all these guys, but when you're at a certain level, right or wrong, you do have the ability to call the shots, right? You have the ability to do what you want to do, and people will watch no matter what. So that's sort of where you're at. But I would have loved to see, like Canelo said, is like set up a little unofficial tournament. Canelo will fight certain guys, and then you have to earn it, which is sort of like guys earn it all the time in boxing throughout the history. So I don't see the issue. I would have much rather seen someone else though than Sulecki for Jamal, for sure.
Oh, yeah. It's like the Don says, the old bait and switch. Nando says Munguia was different for the Jamal stinker. Damn. Well, we got to get it out. Like I said, I'm not going to take too much effort in bashing Jamal. Like, it's just his one fight for the year again. Like, he's kind of becoming irrelevant. And Sulecki, like, dude, the guy already lost to Jacobs. You already lost to Andrade. Like, and I'll be honest, like I had to look up this guy to kind of remind myself like where he was at with things. Like, I don't care about Sulecki. Like, this is such like a whatever fight. But it's their business if they can kind of keep it rolling. I think, I got to say this, PBC, the one thing that I don't like about them is they don't have anybody who could speak for the brand, but sometimes that brand benefits them because then they can just announce a fight and nobody really has to defend it or speak about like why this fight was made, or, they don't have to talk about why the Munguia fight wasn't made necessarily, or, hey, we couldn't find any other opponent, so we had to go with Sulecki. Like, they don't have to explain anything. They just deliver and let the machine promote. But it's to the detriment of their actual real fighters because it helps them from building a brand. Like they really should have a promoter that promotes and speaks and talks about what plans they have for their fighters in the future. Like today, I just listened to an IFL interview with Eddie Hearn. Like it's great hearing what Eddie Hearn has to say, where he's in tune with everything that's going on and what plans he has for the future and the potential of a lot of these boxers. That's what promoting is, and it's like these PBC fighters, they don't really know how to promote themselves very well, and they don't actively have anybody really promoting them in general. So yeah, they might go on like Mike Tyson's show, do a few things, but they could easily be much further along. But they're not even making the right fights for a lot of these guys, man. So it kind of gets disappointing. I'm going to try to focus on fighters who are doing the right thing. But yeah, those are my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think with PBC is like they have Tim Smith hops on interviews every once in a while. I think he's their vice president or president of PBC, but so you get little nuggets here and there. But even though I think Eddie Hearn is sort of pompous in his approach and just how he acts, but I give him props for, like you said, he's on IFL, he's on ES News, he's on Fight Hype, Fight Hub, he's all over the place, and he sort of speaks his mind. Whether some things happen, do they always happen? No, but for the most part, a lot of the stuff he says happens. So, I mean, this is more in recent, like in the last few years since they went to the zone. Like a lot of stuff outside of the Wilder Joshua, a lot of the stuff has happened that he said is going to happen. So have to give it to him. I just wish PBC, because I do like a good amount of fighters that are, not a good amount, but that are under the PBC banner, like Charlo being one of them. I think they're wasting his career to a point. Like, and I don't think it's always PBC to blame. It's sort of the fighters too, because we saw Danny Jacobs. Danny Jacobs, so really early on in his career, even before his illness, he was represented by Al Heyman, and then he left Al Heyman. Whether he was working in the background, I know Rick Glazier said he wasn't working in the background, but he left Al Heyman, got the HBO deal exclusive, and got big fights. So I'm sure other guys could do that as well if they wanted.
Yeah, Ron, I was gonna say to that point that it's not. I mean, you can't blame it all on PBC because I'm sure if there's a fight that he wants them to negotiate for him, he can go over there and say, "Hey, I don't care if I lose. I don't care about anything. I just want to fight this guy." You know what I mean? And we've seen fighters actually do that, go against their promotional wishes. And I think that I don't. It looks to me like he would never do that for any circumstance. He's just like, you know, give me the easy fights. That's it. Give me Canelo or give me the easy fights. Of course, Canelo fight is mostly about the money because, in my opinion, he has absolutely no chance of winning that fight anyway. So, I'm glad that Canelo went for Bivol because at least that fight will be competitive. Canelo may even lose that fight. But the point is that Canelo had a choice: take the easy fights at PBC, or take the harder fight over here with DAZN. And guess what? He chose to go with the Bivol fight. So, which is in my opinion, it's way harder than Benavidez. Benavidez is, I think he's still green, to be honest. I think he's open for a bunch of counters on the inside. With Charlo, I think, like I said, he has no chance of beating Canelo. So I think we should give fighters credit when they go for the harder legacy fights, and not always just go for the easy fights. And
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. I think I would have liked to see. I mean, this wouldn't have happened just because how they had the fight set up. But I would have liked to see like a fight package if it would have been like opposed to having Triple G in the fall. Because I don't think. I mean, I'll still watch it, and it's good for the general public, but we don't need to see that again. I'll still watch it though. I'm still up for that fight, but I would have rather seen where he fights Bivol and then he fights Jamal Charlo or Benavidez, preferably Benavidez. Like I agree that he's open on the inside, and it's because of his long arms. He serves him well with that jab, but he doesn't like his feet are a little weird. He has good like pivots when he does like when he's close to him, but I think maybe like closing distance and effectively punching is another issue Benavidez might have at this point, just because he's sort of like he's when he throws his jab and even when he's punching from the outside trying to get inside, it seems like he's like sort of falling over his front foot. Granted, I'm not a boxing coach, but just sort of from like the outside looking in, it's what happens.
No, great observation, man. Like Benavidez, he needs a lot of work, and I hope one day Canelo fights him if he's still got an undefeated record. But like I said, feel like he's kind of a guy without a division. Like, he's got a really weird frame and he doesn't have any real physical strength, even though he's a big dude. So I think he kind of hides at 168, like a lot of flaws, And Rod, I don't know if you were there during that episode. No, I don't think so. Yeah. Dude, we sized up Benavidez, Zurdo Ramirez, and Munguia. And we were talking about the skill sets of all three of them. And just, we had Dave from the 408 and just unanimously, just Benavidez was just at the bottom of everything. It was kind of sad,
Oh, really?
It is what it is, man. It's just the truth. Nobody can really speak differently, but some people want to classify Benavidez as the boogeyman. I don't know why, but I mean, we'll see what happens. And then Nando makes a good point here. He goes, is Steven Espinoza a simp? Where's the quality control? Who's looking out for Showtime subscribers? Hey, man, that's a great point. Nando, I know you're on Twitter. I don't know if you saw that my tweet of G Funky asking Roberto Diaz about the 2019 offer that Canelo offered Jamal Charlo. He sent somebody referenced that tweet to Espinoza when they were talking about how this most previous deal fell through. And then Espinoza was like, oh, why are you rehashing old stuff? That was a long time ago. He really didn't directly acknowledge one way or the other if the offer was real. But I mean, to me, it just continues to show that the offer was real.
Yeah, if it wasn't real, he would have totally said, hey, that was completely false. That would be the first reaction when something's not true. And from the beginning, when Oscar said that, we offered Jermell Charlo. It fit right along the timeline when the zone made it okay for Canelo to fight Charlo. So all those pieces just fell together for Jermell Charlo and them guys to say no. And that's what happened, dude. A lot of people didn't want to accept it back then, but guess what? It's true, man. That's what happened.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And Nando says, I remember that live. I did too, man. I asked that question, and G Funky asked it, and I was sitting there going all right, Nopal and I were harping on the fact that the offer was legit, but we didn't have any real confirmation. But that tweet's been used a lot, man. It still has action. It's getting retweeted these days still. That was the first time there was a hard answer from Roberto Diaz, who doesn't really have any loyalty towards Canelo anymore, as in Canelo's doing his own thing, so man, I remember I was just kind of waiting for that to see what he would say, man. So that was a really exciting episode.
Yeah. And from when his brother Jermell confirmed it on when they're on Instagram Live, even though they're yelling at each other, he said, oh, I wouldn't have ducked for 15 million or whatever, which it's crazy when you think about it. Cause I don't know how much they make, but it's probably 3 million. So 5 times that your normal purse for a fight, and you have a big name, that's a win-win for you. Because if you lose, you're lost to Canelo. If you win, you beat Canelo and you made a ton of money, and now you have leverage in the next negotiation too. So it's I wish I would have seen that fight because I'm a fan of Jermall Charlo and I think he has great ability. I just think he's getting a little old now, and we're seeing that in the ring. Even against Korbov, we saw that in the ring. Even though he it's what Dwyer says, knockouts cause amnesia, or it's even big moments cause amnesia sometimes for fight fans, that they he might have stunned him or hurt him, but then you forget what led up to that point. So
oh yeah, and I like Jamal Charlo too. The Chile Crew knows that we're going to be doing the old fashioned ESPN 12 rounds for Canelo fights coming up, and so I started taking notes on just punches, skill set, defense, offense, power, all that stuff. And so I ended up watching the Korobov fight, which, and I think Jamal Charlo won that fight. I don't know why people think that was a robbery. I've never thought that was a robbery, but I watched a few Jamal Charlo fights, and man, I actually appreciate a lot of his skill set, and he does a lot of things very well. I've always said he's got good fundamentals, not necessarily as far as being able to go on the back foot. Like I said, he can't really go anywhere, and that's why I give the advantage to Canelo for sure. But no, man, I like his skill set too. So it's a real shame that we don't get a chance to see him a little more active in the fights that we do want, because man, he's getting older, 31, and it's we're not getting promised anything again. Okay, you're gonna fight Sulecki, all right, you're gonna do it in the summer. Are you gonna give us a fight in the fall or winter, or are you just gonna go one fight per year like you did last year, like you did the year before? And the competition seemingly keeps getting worse and worse. So I mean, I don't know who's making excuses for this guy anymore. I mean, it's hard to defend Jamal Charlo at this point. All right, man. Well, we're going to wrap it up. Thank you guys so much for joining us. It was great to have Brian join us, and the hired gun of HCP was back to chime in for a little bit. Run PMC, man. You always have a chair here, man. So we wish you well, man. And Nopal, always a pleasure. So everybody have a great day, and we're going to take next week off, right? Because we got some stuff going on. But the week after, we'll be back on our regularly scheduled programming dates, man. So everybody take